I was reflecting this week, and I realized that Mom and Dad, I don't know if you know this, but I didn't tell you this week, but it's 22 years ago today, this late October Sunday, the last day in October, as I recall, that we attended Capital Christian Fellowship for the first time.
Amen.
So it's been 22 years. How many years ago was it that we had a late October service outside in the parking lot because we didn't have permission? 13 years ago. Wow. It was late October, I don't know which Sunday, and it's just amazing how the years fly by. Thank you for the opportunity to share this morning, and thank you as a church for your love and care during this unexpected visit here to the United States as a result of Grayson and his health challenges, which Pastor Glenn mentioned. We've discovered a few things, probably more than we wanted to discover, but one of the things we've discovered is that crisis is a wonderful teacher if you let it shape you.
Yeah.
But there's an element of cooperating with crisis that's required on our parts for it to become the teacher that it can be.
Yeah.
And we all face pain, we all face challenge, we all face issues, and it's really a choice we make about how we're going to cooperate with crisis. And so we've learned that there's times we have and times we haven't through this, but we've learned a lot of lessons. I want to give you just a real quick update on Grayson, if we could, before we dive into the word I feel God's put in my heart for this morning. About 2 weeks back, for those of you that don't know, our son had a stroke late May in our home in northern Tanzania. He's 18 months at the time, 22 months now. You may or may not know, some of you are new today. We pastored here at this church for 7 years. We've been in Africa for the last 7 years, living in South Africa and now in Tanzania, which Agnes Cosmos is from Arusha, Tanzania. Agnes, wave. This is our dear, dear sister that we love. And she's a part of our team in Tanzania. And our son had a stroke late May, which brought us back here for rehabilitation and medical treatment. And so it's been a long and kind of arduous road to recovery. Grayson's done very, very well in relearning function and how to walk and use his hands and his feet and his mouth. As long as you don't give him chicken, it takes him about 30 minutes to chew one piece. So we've just taken chicken out. I don't have to, ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time for 30 minutes of chicken chewing. So we're gonna go with some soft foods until we can get this chicken thing under control. So anyway, he's doing great. He's real funky in the mornings, falling all over the place and stuff. But after about an hour, he just looks pretty normal. And but we've had some struggles with health issues on the inside of his body. And about 2 weeks ago, we were in an appointment and we were told for the first time with a fair degree of certainty why Grayson had his stroke. And we haven't yet shared this publicly, but wanted to share with you this morning that Grayson does have some type of a fairly rare vascular disorder that is affecting his arteries and blood vessels in his body. It's one of 4 probably different disorders that all of them are affecting blood vessels, and all of them are in fact chronic, and all of them will require a lot of care. And so he's in a week and a half going to have a 5-hour sedated procedure to try to go into his kidney area and locate a clogged or collapsed or narrowed artery that's causing his body to put off a chemical called renin at a high level. And they need to repair that, and that's just one step on the road. We have a really important appointment November 14th with a world-famous geneticist named Dr. Dietz at Johns Hopkins that will help us to really determine what exactly Grayson has going on inside his body. So he'd be good at fooling us just by glancing at him, but we do need a miracle still for his body. As you can imagine, as parents and ones who live internationally, our future is certainly in discussion. And so as we make those decisions and feel it's timing to be sharing those decisions, we will make sure that our home church, our setting church, hears about that in a timely way. But we're in the midst of a lot of discernment. And so we just welcome your prayers. We welcome your continued faith. I really believe there's something about adding our faith to one another's faith. So would you just add your faith to ours? However that works and looks, I just believe, stop crying if you It is tough. It's tough, yeah. So anyway, yeah. So add your faith to ours, please. That's a lot to think about, a lot to go through. And so, yeah, babe, thanks for crying. That's helpful.
Okay.
Yeah.
It is helpful.
Anyway. Is Pierre in the room? Pierre, thank you so much, wherever you are. He's back there for what you're doing for our work and our ministry this morning. And thank each of you who are participating. Well, I want to preach. I've been traveling around different churches lately, and I started really enjoying teaching again. I didn't get to do a lot of it in the last year, so can I just preach for a few minutes? Okay, let's do that. I want to talk this morning out of Romans chapter 12, and it won't be an exegetical sermon. We'll leave that to Pastor Glenn to do. It will be a sermon that's very much formed by our 7 years living overseas. But it's also a message that I feel combines our work overseas with our reality. Can I use possessive language? Our reality as a congregation. As a diverse congregation, people from many different nations and persuasions and backgrounds and experiences, that also uniquely has a calling toward restoration, toward the bringing together of people, toward loving people different than us, toward loving difficult people, loving enemy, loving poor, broken. So this is a marriage of some ideas that flow, yes, from our experience. Here's what we've learned, but I think it might work here too. Does that make sense? Amen. And so that's what we're going to do this morning. I want to talk about 4 ways around a wall. Is that strange sounding? I thought about calling it breaking down walls, but I thought that sounded too violent for Anabaptists. And I thought maybe I was going to go with, oh, this is better. We won't break walls. We're going to climb walls. And then I started cracking up thinking about some of us trying to climb a wall. You can start with me. That'd be quite the sight. Mom, you're second. I want to see you scale that wall. I thought maybe we wouldn't relate as well to it. So we're going to talk about how to get around the wall. Is that okay? And so we have heard a lot about walls. Amen. In the last year. Walls I didn't know even existed are showing up. Walls I didn't know were possible to build are on the table. We've heard a lot about walls. We've heard a lot about walls, but we've seen a lot about walls. Walls have shown up in relationships between people around topics that there weren't even any tension about 2 years ago, 5 years ago. Or if it was certainly dormant. It didn't cause any provocation in relationships, but suddenly there's all these walls. I mean, we know what walls are meant to do. We don't need to insult anyone's intelligence, but let's just remember they divide space. They delineate. So you have a wall between your living room and your bedroom because when you go to bed, you don't want to hear the television. Walls divide and they mark off barriers. This is good. Walls aren't bad. Walls are helpful. In the right place and for the right use, as long as walls do what walls are supposed to do, walls are good, right? But when walls are doing something they aren't intended to do, now we run into what we call in Kiswahili a shida. Everybody say shida. Shida. Shida is problem. It's like big problem, bad. So our missions teams decided we're going to print t-shirts that say shida happens to bring the English and the Swahili together in a meaningful and memorable way. Yeah. So anyway, so these walls, though, they provide some safety, right? Even in the sense that the safety from the hyenas that we don't have here, but if we have a wall here, those hyenas can't get us. They also provide safety, albeit false, and security when it comes to people. And so we basically end up deciding things, which I like to call lies, that construct these walls. And so it is. And so Romans chapter 12, let's look at the scriptures, because I think this is all super connected to how we think. Now, I often camp in a passage for a year or two. I've been in Romans 12 for a while. It's just a fave for me, especially the first 5 verses. because it gets at this transforming of the mind. And I can't get enough of this, thinking it really is connected to how we think about each other. What decisions we've made, false decisions, whatever. So Romans 12. I've been fighting a cold. I don't need to use my voice here. Let's have someone else do it. Ismail, would you do this for us?
Sure.
Why don't you stand up real loud and read for us? And I'm going to interrupt you a few times if it's okay.
Okay,
All right.
no problem. And so, dear brothers and sisters, I plead with you to give your bodies to God.
Give your what?
Your bodies.
Bodies, and this is a pleading. This is interesting, right? I plead with you to give your bodies to God. Okay?
Okay, because of all he has done for you. Let them be a living and holy sacrifice, the kind he will find acceptable. This is truly the way to worship him.
Interesting. That's a very different definition than we often work with of worship.
Don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think.
Let God do what? Transform you. Some of your Bibles are going to say transformation by the renewing of your mind. This says let God transform you into what?
New person.
A new person by changing the way you think. This is going to be key to what we're going to talk about.
Then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect.
Awesome.
Because all of the privilege and authority God has given me, I give each of you this warning.
Here's a warning.
Don't think you are better than you really are.
Don't think you're better. Don't think you figured out. Don't think you've got the corner on the truth market. Don't think your way of thinking is always the best or your culture is supreme. But don't think better of yourself than you really are, because
Be honest in your evaluation of yourself,
Yes.
measuring yourselves by the faith God has given us. Amen. Just as our bodies have many parts, and each part has special function, so it is with Christ's body. We are many parts in one body, and we all belong to each other.
Amen. We are many, thank you, Ismail. We are many parts of one body, and we all belong. Well, this passage is preached all by itself. But within it is all of this nuance of transformation of our minds and how we all work together, and we need one another, and we'll tie those ideas together now. So this thing of being transformed by the renewing of how we think, our minds, is so needed when we cross cultures, and which we've had to do, and many of you have had to do in many ways. I found that there are open thinkers and closed thinkers. So open thinkers are, so there's literally actually a mechanism in our brain that is there to react to new information that contradicts what we thought was sorted out already, what we thought was final. And your body actually put off a chemical. If you've ever been in a very difficult conversation and someone's saying something you don't agree with, you know about that chemical. Because some of us put off a little more of it than others, get a little bit more excited about what we're talking about than others. And so, but there are closed things, no things. There are people in this room that literally come in, not knowing this is your inner narrative, but you sit down in a Sunday morning service and you think, I pretty much know most of what Pastor Glenn's going to say here, and just kind of hold on to what you've got. And there's others of you that come in and you're like, come on and shake me. Say something new. I'm ready. I am open. And it's just kind of there. You just don't really know how much it's there and how much it isn't there. But I've related that many times. I can remember the day I first landed in China in 2007. I was thinking, what were some times I can remember my mind being transformed by the way I think, my life being transformed by what I was thinking? And one of those for me was the first day I landed in China. And I was like, whoa. Now this, I'd been to Europe, but it was too much similar to this. China was a whole nother ballgame. Or walking the streets of Amman, Jordan, getting into the home of a Syrian refugee in 2014 and going, whoa. Their house was blown up by a bomb. And they fled. in here. Just having my mind just transform of what is possible, the possibility of this level of pain. Or the trip we took to Migori, rural western Kenya, for 3 days as a family, just to feel what it was like to have no water, no electricity. And it felt like if we don't do this, we really are we're not going to do this long. I'll be surprised if my sweetheart will sleep in this place 3 nights. But we got to at least do 3 nights, because there's something of knowing what this feels like that we need. And I remember our minds being transformed. Like, what? I remember Davis's meltdown. All I'm asking for is a cold Coke. And wonderful, loving Father I am. Do you see a power outlet? Do you see a single refrigerator? I can't give you a cold Coke. It's like 30 kilometers of terrible road to get you one. But here's what I've discovered in some of our time overseas, and some of you will really relate to this. It feels like everywhere I've gone, and now I've been to 40 countries in my short life, and lived residentially outside the U.S. in 2, and everywhere I've gone, I've figured out more and more about what I don't know. And I have been absolutely stunned, just floored, that the people that have been the least places, experienced the least things, seem to know the most. And those that have been around and gone more places and experienced more life seem to have figured out they know the least. This is absolutely ironic and hilarious when you're in interpersonal relations with people and you notice it. Because you realize it's that complex, there's that much more, there's that much deeper, and you're like, oh, I don't know anything. But before you get exposed to that, you didn't know what was possible. And so, anyway, so as we have gone through this experience of trying to cross these cultures, I asked myself a question. What would work anywhere? What works in the United States as well as it worked in Tanzania, as well as it worked in South Africa, as well as it worked in Malawi? And here's what I want to give you this morning. 4 ways around a wall. Because there are walls, they naturally come rising up between anyone that's different than we are. We need to know, as Jesus followers, lovers of people, how to get around these walls. And so I'm just going to share 4 that worked for me and see if they help you. Okay? And when I say culture, I'm not just talking about a different nationality this morning. So would you indulge me and apply these ideas to subgroups of your very same skin color? There are so many groups in America that are so wildly different than me, but yet these people are American, and there's all these walls, and I don't even know what to do with them. So this is bigger than someone from another country. It can be that, but it can be more. Number 1, we get around walls by asking, not assuming. Remember, we are all one body with many parts, and so we're relying on each other, not thinking more highly of ourselves than we ought to, but realizing how much we need one another. We are asking and not assuming. Ask. And ask things you've never tried asking before. Don't ask the same stupid question. What do your people eat? Get on Google. When you have an opportunity to personally interact with a human being that's different than you, don't ask a Googleable question. Ask a non-Googleable question. You understand what I'm saying? And so it's really not that difficult. And the power of a good question can be transformative in the way that you think. And so I followed this teacher that I just think is fascinating, and he told this story. He said he went to a party. Sorry, I'm moving. Is this okay with this thing? I didn't ask you this. What can you do with this? Oh, hello, Facebook Live. There are people on here. Good morning. Bless you. Everyone watching online to all of our services. I've always wanted to do this. Okay. So, where was I saying? Oh, so I lost guy as a teacher, and he told a story of a party he went to. And he's at this party milling around, and he meets this woman, and he kind of asks, like, what do you do, or whatever. And she said, I just retired. What did you do? Well, I was a nurse. Really? How long? 40 years. You were a nurse for 40 years? Really? Like in different hospitals? No, same hospital, 40 years. He said, are you serious? What was it like your last day when you went to work after 40 years of doing the same job? Tell me what that was like. She talked, unpacked what it was like. Wow. And then like when you left that day, did you like pack a box of stuff you collected? Like what did that look like when you left the last day at the end of the day after 40 years? He listened. Then he said, I got it. Then when the first Monday morning came that you did not get up to go to the same job you had worked for 40 years, what did that feel like? Now, do you see what this man did? He asked 3 or 4 very simple questions that any one of us in this room could manage to ask another human being. Yeah. And this woman shared her story, shared her experience. All he did is ask and listen. And what did she feel? She felt incredible compassion. Yeah. She felt loved. She felt validated and valued and heard and listened to. And all he did is ask questions like, what was that like? That's not Googleable. Tell me what it felt like after 40 years to not wake up and go to the same job. And what did he do? He mined out wisdom from someone that had worked a job 40 years. Why? Because he moves every 4 years. He's more like me. And so he needed to hear from somebody that knows how to sit still. Because we need the sit-stillers and we need the go-getters. If we don't have both, we're all in trouble.
Yes.
And if the go-getters don't listen to the sit-stillers, goodness help us, and the other way is also true. And so I thought that was a brilliant illustration for this idea of how we cross culture, because we need to ask and not assume about even deeper things than your nursing career. Yeah. Ask, ask, ask. Number 2, the time is just rolling. So the second way we get around a wall is by listening, not lecturing. You see, if you ask a question but you don't actually listen, then you have not completed the cycle or completed your goal. You've just actually patronized someone. Yes. And I've done it too many times. You know, we probably patronize people every day with our famous "How are you?" when I don't really care how you are question. This morning, Brother Will Good told me, well, what I want to say is, well, there's a lot of stuff that I don't like the way it's going. I need about 20 minutes to tell you. Do you have 20 minutes? I thought that was good, Will. And so, but when we ask, we need to listen. And we listen, we don't lecture. You see? And so we keep our lectures for classrooms, friends. That's what I believe. Keep your lectures for classrooms. Some of us love to lecture. Give our religious lecture to people as long as they're giving us their ears. And I think when we're working to develop meaningful relationships that get around walls, we can't use lecturing so that everyone's absolutely certain what we think. We need to use listening more. That's why we've got 2 ears. And so I like to say it like this. If you want to tweet something, tweet this. We hold convictions. You've heard this before. You hold convictions. These are my deeply held convictions. Have you heard this? 3 of you? Okay. I've heard it a lot. We give compassion. We hold conviction. We don't throw convictions out like this. Hey, conviction, there's my conviction, there's my conviction. We hold our conviction. They're like the rebar of our soul. Yeah. We don't walk around and tell everyone our convictions like what's mail time and we're handing them out. We listen. That's not an effective way to carry convictions. We hold them. And when Holy Spirit creates opportunities for you to share them because someone's seeking to know them, then you do it. And so we listen, and we listen deep. I like to say it like this. We listen deep and we listen long. So Africa has taught me this. Because I like to talk. And Africa, especially my male African friends, they don't just blurt everything out. There's a lot of sitting. At home we have a Maasai guard named William. He's killed a lion. He carries a stick where he knocks the heads of snakes off, you know. And then we'll sit outside with William, I will, and have chai under the stars and drink tea. And sometimes, I think William says about 3 sentences a month. And so we sit outside, and sometimes I've sat there. I remember one particular night. 30 minutes. Silence. After 30 minutes of sounds a long time for me, but I was out there to sit that night. I wasn't out there to hurry. Most nights I wouldn't give him 30 minutes to sit and drink chai together and not talk. 30 minutes, he says, tell me. I'll try to do his accent. Tell me. In that story where Jesus was going through the crowd and a man or the woman came behind and touched her clothes, and then he turned around and said, who touched me? Why can Jesus say, who touched me? He must know he's God. And we began to talk. And I found every time I shut up any longer than 10 minutes, William had a deep spiritual question. So I have found that sometimes the thing you need to hear the most comes only after you've waited the awkward longest. And it's sometimes because the introverts formulate their ideas and give them only when they think they'll get received. Until you create the space for receipt, they're never coming out. But when we shut up long enough, stop lecturing, and just listen, we get the goods that actually transform us. Because we're all one body with many parts. And we ought not think more highly of ourselves than we ought to. This is how our minds are transformed. And so, the third way around the wall, in my experience, has been authenticity and not acting. Probably my biggest surprise living overseas has been that everywhere I've gone, people have appreciated authenticity. Just you being real. A lot of missions training over the last years, and Glenn can attest, Pastor Glenn would have been doing these, would be very much toward cultural sensitivity and be really careful and make sure you do all the right things to not upset local people. And I get that, and I agree with it to some extent. But it also can create a fear to bring a version of a false self to a setting. And so we've decided, actually, this is who we are. I have an iPhone. I can hide my iPhone, or I can be real, thank you, about the fact that I have an iPhone. We can fake like we can actually make it in a mud hut, which is what our friends right down the street live in, which we would die, or we can be real and genuine about who we are. People appreciate authenticity. Don't bring me a false version of yourself. Bring me who you are. In Tanzania, we have many, many walls. We have walls that kind of wall off our compound, physical walls. And but yet somehow we have people coming into our life again and again and again. And those walls are stopping our neighborhood from coming through. And there's times I've wondered why. And I think it's because we're who we are with them. So if they ask me, do you like ugali, which is like this stiff porridge, the right answer is yes. I love your favorite food, ugali. But that's a lie. I don't love ugali. I can eat ugali because I love you and I want to be with you. So when they ask me, you love ugali? They always ask, do you love? They don't say, do you like? If they said like, I think I could get away with it. Do you love ugali? No, I don't love ugali. I love you and I will eat ugali every day. Kila siku tunakula ugali. Hamna zaidi, more, zaidi. I want more ugali because I'm with you. But I'm not going to sit here, I like ugali. Truth is attractive. Truth is attractive. Genuineness draws people. And so I think in any of these situations where you have to cross a wall or get around a wall that's between you and another person, authenticity and not acting. Bring the real you, not the you think they want at that time. My brother's going to throw something at me in just a second. I got to hurry up. Don't throw anything yet. 4, and finally, this is my last point in closing. No, it's not closing yet, but it's my point. The way around the wall is compassion, not comfort. It's compassion, not comfort. So you'll be uncomfortable. You're going to be uncomfortable. We're always uncomfortable. I'm constantly uncomfortable in a mission center. You're going to be uncomfortable in many different discussions and relationships if you are going to take this challenge to get around these walls.
Yes.
I'm uncomfortable. I have 4 childhood friends who are transgender. 4. I knew about 0 when I came here May 29th. I've discovered 4, 2 from church, 1 from my school, Christian school that I graduated from, and another from my area that I grew up in, and they're all transgender. And I don't have a clue. All I do is see this stuff in the news. I don't have a clue how to handle this issue. My natural reaction outside of Spirit of God is judgment and hatred, and they're disgusting. That's my natural. My Holy Spirit thing is I better ask and not assume. I better listen and not lecture.
Yeah.
I better be authentic and not act, and I better show compassion over my comfort.
Yeah.
So I got a lunch appointment with one of them coming up because I need to understand.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna ask, tell me your story. Like, I want to know more. How does this? What is the way I can love? If I've got 4, there's more later. So how do I do this? I don't have the tools or the knowledge. No one's ever trained me. I've never read a book on how to befriend or show compassion or to treat in a kingdom way a transgender human being. I don't know. If you know, teach me someday. So all I can do is ask. I don't know what else to do. Because my natural instinct is just go, turn them over to hell or whatever. That's not going to do anything that's going to transform them. So I don't know. I'm reaching here, guys. And there's about 20 other topics I don't have time to talk about that I just don't get. And the only way I'm going to do it is if I find ways around the wall. And so Richard Foster says this: whenever we develop significant friendships with those who are not like us culturally, we become broader, wiser persons. I love that. I love that. And so finally, with my landing gear down here, it really does come back to a renewing of our minds, a permission. God, you can transform me by changing the way I think. And that is not easy. And I don't think it's an accident here in this biblical text that it's right away after this we see this thing about we're all one body with many parts.
Yeah.
I don't think that's just by chance. There is some marriage of this transformation to the way we think in community by understanding we aren't all that and we need to learn and listen and grow. Let me quickly, in closing, show you this video. I've never put this online, and we won't. But I want you to look at this. This is 3 days after Grayson's stroke in Nairobi. Okay?
Hey Grayson, say hi to the family. At least, say hi to the family. At least wave your side you can move. There you go, wave that side. Move this leg. Show them how you can move this leg and that arm. Show them. There you go, move them around.
You see the right side? No movement at all.
Show them how you can move them. Good boy. Yeah, wave to the one side you can move. If you notice here is just immobile. His leg and arm are just ragged, just like, yeah, but this side he can move.
So this was Grayson in Nairobi. This is something we didn't share with anyone other than our family. This was what happened right after his stroke. There's a reason I'm showing you this. Because I got to wondering 30 days later he walked. And I thought, well, this is incredible. And your first thing is you just say, it's a miracle. But the more that I listened and understood what was going on in his actual body, I found out about something called plasticity, neuroplasticity. And you are smarter than me. Most of you probably know more about this than I do, but we basically found out that's like plasticity or elastic in the brain that changes the way the brain functions. Can you believe that a part of Grayson's brain, let's pop that picture up, let's look at his brain. That black spot on that side, on the right side, is where his stroke happened. That dead spot in his brain is what stopped his body from being able to communicate, his brain being able to communicate with the right side of his body. And so what happens is that the rest of his brain other parts of the brain start to take on new jobs, basically, to cause behaviors they weren't intended to cause. You see, as a result of an experience or injury that Grayson had, this miracle embodied into his body called a human brain, which is unlike and unsurpassed by any computer that's been made yet, was able to rework how it operates, and a part of his brain that wasn't supposed to say lift your leg now says lift your leg. So there was a transforming literally of his mind by changing the way that he thinks. This alteration of his neuro pathways and his living brain in response to that, and it got me thinking. I wonder if our faith doesn't somehow work like this. I wonder, and as I've watched Grayson develop even further, how our faith and our lives together shouldn't operate with such plasticity. That as a result of experience and injury, we will literally change the way that we are and relate and what we're able to do. Because we're made by God. We're made by God like this. His brain naturally did this. Yeah. And it sent me into a season of deep yearning. What does that mean in our faith and our knowledge of who God is and who each other are and how this works? And so, dear brothers and sisters, I plead with you to give your bodies to God because of all He's done for you. Let them be a living and holy sacrifice, the kind that He will find acceptable. This is truly the way you worship Him. Don't copy the behaviors and the patterns of this world, CCF, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. In Jesus' name, amen.